All right, welcome to Creator Hardware, and today we're talking about two camera setups. There's lots of reasons to do two camera setups, and we're going to talk about some of the basics to doing two camera recording. First thing you need to do is obviously set up two cameras. Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K as my main camera and my A6600 on the Elgato boom arm as my second camera. But why do you want to do a two camera shot? There's lots of reasons. Sometimes it's for dramatic effect when you're trying to make a strong point. Going back to my childhood, you've got the old news stories. You know, they go, today's weather, bright and sunny, gonna be a beautiful day. And after this break, we're gonna talk about people scamming YouTubers. It can be used for dramatic effect to talk between cameras. Now, one of the hardest things about talking between cameras is, well, simply remembering which camera to talk to. Because trust me, I've done two camera shots, and while I'm looking at that camera, I'm actually talking to that one. Because it's not hard to go, you know, you're looking at this one with your eyes, but yet, you know, you're going, it's easy to get confused, especially for a, you know, first time doing two camera setups. And that's one thing you need to consider. Another thing you need to consider is audio. Audio, well, is kind of important. There's nothing worse than out of sync audio. On this camera, I've got a Rode shotgun mic just for scratch audio. On my Blackmagic, I've got my Sennheiser wireless system. Now, what I will do in post, and I'll show some of this stuff in part of this video, but I will use the audio that is being recorded to my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K as audio for both this camera and this camera. It's important when you're doing multi-camera shots that you sync the audio. Now, in more elaborate situations, you can use like a tentacle sync, which will give you time code, but generally in a more YouTuber world, you really don't need that kind of thing. Just clap or finger snap or whatever. Normally what I would do in the beginning of every video is I clap my hands 3 times to sync the audio. I always process my audio separate from my video. So whether I'm recording internally into my camera or externally into a recorder, it's always processed. So in post, I always have to link it back together. So for me, my workflow, it's no big deal to do a second camera. Now, there's other reasons to do separate cameras. Sometimes you're doing a product shot. So let's say you've got a product and you want a top-down shot so you can explain stuff, don't mind the hands, but you've got the A-roll camera to pick up when you're talking to the camera, but you've got the second camera to talk about the product you're actually reviewing. You know, ooh, got to do the Vanna hands. And that's one of the reasons why you might do a two camera shot, is for those top-down shots. One of the advantages of having a two camera setup is you can do the talking head part while you're doing the product review. See, while I'm sitting here looking at the camera, out of focus by the way, because Blackmagic, but you can have the main camera recording your audio while you showcase the product you're talking about. And I'm just using this as a prop because, you know, prop. That's one of the ways a second camera comes in really handy for these kind of things. When you're doing product review, building something, you're talking about a product and you want to show the product closer than you would normally show it on like a talking head. Like if I'm doing this kind of video, it's fine, but what's better is you put it in a shot like this and you talk about, you know, you match it to these colors, you know, you do that kind of stuff. It's a really good way to utilize a second camera. Now let's talk about one of the harder things about using two different cameras, and that is the differences in color of the video. I'm currently using a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K and an A6600. Chances are, despite the ISOs being relatively set the same, etc., that video and that video are gonna look different. Now, matching your cameras exactly and all the settings is the ideal way to do it because, well, everything is gonna look the same. Now, I'm not gonna post-process it because I want you to see when I switch cameras, not just by angle, but the differences in those videos. Now let's talk post-production. Post-production, you're gonna go into your software. Now, Adobe Premiere Pro has a multi-camera system where you can link multiple videos in a multi-camera sequence, and in the software, you can switch between what scene you want. It's really important when you do that, you have really good audio, you set that audio track to the right track, but then you can switch so if I'm talking to this camera and I go to this camera, it's a seamless transition. You just cut and you thing. And I'll show you some of that in segment coming up. It can make for a much more dramatic video and it can make for an easier production. Because think about it. I've got a camera set up for my talking head segment. Well, then I've got to do the product segment with the same camera. That can get, well, annoying because you have to reset up, you have to set up your new angle, and then you gotta kind of make everything kind of go together. Whereas if you're doing it in a seamless fashion at the same time, you go from talking about this to talking to the B camera, and you don't break your rhythm. Video will flow much better with that flow going instead of filming this segment, then tearing down and going to another setup to film the second part. It's much easier to have a multi-camera setup. It's expensive. I mean, $2,000, $4,000, but you don't need this high end of equipment. You know, a secondary camera can be a GoPro used, a cheaper point and shoot. You don't have to do a A6600, it's just, that's the camera I have that's secondary. All right, now we're gonna switch to the computer and we're gonna show you how to kind of set up all of these shots so it makes for a seamless video. And you'll get to see some some of my little tricks. Not really, but you'll get to see how I process this video and how you can make your own multi-camera segment go seamlessly. All right, so I've got my two camera shots here. I've got my A cam, my B cam. What we're gonna do is we're gonna highlight them and go to multi-camera sequence. You can name it however you want, but basically just, I leave everything alone. Hit OK, it's gonna process it, it's gonna merge it. So sometimes Adobe gets weird about multi-camera sequences with merged clips, so sometimes you'll have to merge them, export them, and then re-import them into a new project to get them to do a merged project. So multi-camera shot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the multi-camera. This is now both camera feeds and audio. We are gonna pull that into the timeline and drop it. Now, as you can see, it is green. So we're gonna go ahead and expand everything up so I can see them, pull it back. And as you can see right here, I've got my claps to sync both audio tracks. Obviously, we can go ahead and rip or delete that. And we've got, as you can see, I'm on the wrong camera. So we double click on that. And that'll bring up this box in the preview window. So you click on that and you can now see I'm on the main camera on the finished timeline. I keep forgetting that Adobe and OBS both use the space bar for certain things, so I keep screwing up and changing cameras on OBS. So let me minimize that, click on this, and then you can see. Today we're talking about, and I am on the main screen. So you can see I've switched views here. I'm talking to the other camera. Now you can hold this pause in here and leave it for a transition or whatever you want to do. But so what you want to do is you're going to cut the scene. As you can see, I'm on the wrong video. I'm talking to the other camera. What I'm going to do is switch to pointer, double click on it, and then I'm going to switch to I'm on the second camera. 2 camera setups. So obviously I want to cut that out. So I'm going to come here. Setup. A little space here for my bumper. Pull my title bumper in. I got. So now I'm on a new segment. And obviously I'm on the wrong camera, so I'm going to double click it on again and switch camera views. Now, you can see when you switch camera views, you can see in the preview what camera you're on. If you scroll back here, I'm on the B cam, here I'm in the A cam, and you really don't need to do any sort of transition between the two because, well, you've got a transition. You switch cameras. 2 camera setups. And more or less, the rest of the video is going to be the same. You're going to go to each segment where you're talking to one camera. See, I'm about to switch. As I'm going through the timeline, I can see I'm about to switch to the B cam. So I lengthen the timeline. I'm going to come back here. Again, cut. And I'm going to switch cams. I'm on the right camera. On the Elgato boom arm as my second camera. And I know you've watched all this, so I'm not going to bore you with going through, but this is the process. Once you've got the multi-camera set up, so as I said, once you've got the multi-camera set up, it's really just editing and switching between your camera views as you go through the video when you switch between cameras. So when you're like in this shot right here, I'm talking to the A6600. I'm not talking to the Blackmagic. All right, so one of the things I wanted to kind of showcase or highlight is the difference in my skin tone. As you can see in this shot and this shot, my skin tones are very different. I look much more white in this video, much more peach, and I look more tanned in this video. And that's just the color differences between a Blackmagic and a Sony A6600. Now, I didn't try to color match them simply because I want to showcase that as something you're going to have to deal with. Now, color matching, I can sit there and do a tutorial on trying to get 2 different formats to try to look alike, but you know, your mileage will vary on that because it's basically going to be trial and error trying to get them close. I don't want to sit here and go through, 20 minutes of color grading just to get them close and then have you not realize that that's so important. I want it to kind of be jarring so you understand that this is something you're going to have to worry about if you're doing a multi-camera shoot with 2 very different cameras. If you have 2 identical cameras, it is 100% not the concern. Let me rephrase that. If you have 2 cameras with the exact same lenses, because even lenses vary. So you go from, one camera's got a kit lens to the other one's got a Sigma, you're gonna have a different color based on that. So you're gonna have to do some color grading. But I specifically left it not color graded, not corrected, because I want to showcase that is something you're going to want to deal with if you don't have identical cameras and lenses. The rest of it is just a standard edit. Only difference is as you're going through the edit, you're gonna need to change the camera angle. It's also really important to go back through your video multiple times to make sure you have the right camera selected. It's not hard to undo something and then realize you undid the camera angle you just did. It's really important you go back through the footage and verify that you have the correct camera angle. Because trust me, it's not hard on a multi-camera shot to screw up and be on the wrong camera. But other than that, it's not a hard process. With Adobe, it's really easy, other than the idiosyncrasy of them not wanting to do merge clips. If you're not separating your audio and you've got good audio from both of your audio sources, it's not a big deal. But if you're like me, you process your audio anyway, it's just an added step when you do two cameras. So keep that in mind. As always, hit record, hit upload. Thanks for watching. This is Creator Hardware.